Preparing for a Salesforce admin interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 15 key questions you're likely to face. For each question you'll see a sample answer followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. How do you decide whether to use a validation rule, flow, approval process, or Apex? I start with the requirement, not the tool. For a simple field update, I use a before-save record triggered flow because it is fast and bulk safe. For complex logic involving external services or unsupported operations, I evaluate Apex with proper bulkification. I also consider validation rules, approvals, maintainability, and user experience. My choice follows the least customization necessary, with testing, documentation, and governor limit awareness built into the implementation. While answering, focus on requirement complexity, declarative first thinking, before save and after save flow behavior, validation timing, approval use cases, Apex limitations, bulkification, maintainability, testing, and governor limit awareness. Question 2. Explain Salesforce's security model and how you would troubleshoot a user who cannot access a record. I troubleshoot from broad access to specific access. First, I check the user's license, profile, permission sets, object permissions, and field-level security. Then I review organization-wide defaults, ownership, role hierarchy, sharing rules, teams, manual sharing, and restriction rules. I use view all and modify all carefully because they bypass normal sharing. Finally, I reproduce the issue as that user and verify whether the missing access concerns the object, field, or individual record. Make sure to cover object permissions, field-level security, record ownership, organization-wide defaults, role hierarchy, sharing rules, manual sharing, teams, permission sets, restriction rules, and a structured troubleshooting sequence. Question 3. When would you use profiles, permission sets, and permission set groups? I treat a profile as the user's baseline, especially for login settings and minimum object access. I use permission sets to grant additional permissions without creating many profiles. Permission set groups bundle access for job functions, such as a service representative, and muting removes unnecessary permissions from that bundle. This model scales better, simplifies audits, and reduces profile sprawl. I always confirm license compatibility before assigning permissions. In your answer, distinguish baseline permissions from additive access, explain why profiles should remain minimal, discuss permission set groups and muting permissions, and mention license compatibility, auditing, and scalable administration. Question 4. How would you design a lead assignment process for multiple regions and product teams? I would first clarify the routing dimensions, such as geography, product, lead source, and segment. Then I would order lead assignment rules from most specific to most general, using queues where teams share ownership. If the business requires true round-robin or capacity balancing, I would design flow or Apex carefully rather than forcing assignment rules beyond their purpose. I would add owner notifications, fallback ownership, exception reporting, and tests for overlapping criteria. Be sure to mention lead assignment rules, criteria order, queues, default owners, round-robin limitations, territory considerations, notifications, exception handling, reassignment, reporting, and testing boundary conditions. Question 5. What is the difference between a lookup relationship and a master detail relationship, and how do you choose between them? A lookup creates a flexible association, while master detail makes the child dependent on the parent. In master detail, the child inherits ownership and sharing, can be deleted with the parent, and supports roll-up summary fields. I choose it when the child has no meaningful existence independently. I choose lookup when ownership or security must differ, the relationship is optional, or deletion should not cascade. I also check future reporting and data model flexibility. Focus on ownership, sharing inheritance, required relationships, cascade deletion, roll-up summaries, reparenting, reporting behavior, conversion constraints, and the business meaning of dependency between records. Question 6. How would you approach migrating data into Salesforce from a legacy system? I begin by profiling the legacy data and defining ownership, field mappings, transformations, and duplicate rules. I create external IDs so updates remain repeatable and load parent records before children. For smaller, simpler imports, I use the data import wizard. For larger or repeatable jobs, data loader is more appropriate. I rehearse in a sandbox, temporarily manage automation where justified, validate record counts and relationships, and retain error files for correction. Cover discovery, data cleansing, external IDs, mapping, transformation, duplicate management, relationship loading order, data import wizard versus data loader, validation controls, sandbox rehearsals, reconciliation, and rollback planning. Question 7. What causes duplicate records in Salesforce, and how would you prevent and resolve them? Duplicates usually enter through manual creation, imports, integrations, or inconsistent matching criteria. I configure matching rules to identify likely duplicates and duplicate rules to warn or block users according to business risk. During migration, I cleanse data and use external IDs for upserts. For existing duplicates, I review the surviving record, preserve important field values, merge carefully, and verify related records. Prevention requires monitoring, user guidance, and integration governance. Discuss matching rules, duplicate rules, exact versus fuzzy matching, alert and block actions, imports, integrations, external IDs, merge behavior, ownership, reporting impact, and governance for ongoing prevention. Question 8. How would you build an approval process for discount requests above a defined threshold? I would define the threshold, eligible statuses, approver hierarchy, and exception policy before building anything. The approval process would lock the opportunity, route it to the correct manager or queue, notify stakeholders, and update status after approval or rejection. I would include comments, delegated approvers, recall rules, and escalation handling. I also test resubmission, changed discount values, missing approvers, and administrator visibility because approval logic often fails at edge cases. Mention entry criteria, approval steps, approver determination, delegation, locking, initial submission actions, approval and rejection actions, recall behavior, notifications, audit history, and exceptions for urgent business cases. Question 9. How do you decide between a report, dashboard, list view, or custom report type? I use list views for focused operational work, reports for filtered analysis and detail, and dashboards for summarized visual monitoring. When standard report relationships cannot expose the required data, I create a custom report type with carefully chosen primary and related objects. I confirm the audience, folder access, running user, filters, and refresh expectations. A good dashboard begins with trustworthy source reports and metrics, not attractive charts alone. In your answer, compare purpose, audience, filtering, joins, row-level detail, visualization, dashboard limits, folder security, custom report type relationships, subscriptions, and performance considerations. Question 10. How would you troubleshoot a record-triggered flow that is failing or creating unexpected updates? I reproduce the failure with the same object, user context, and field values, then inspect flow error emails and debug details. I verify entry criteria, null handling, decision paths, and whether the flow updates records that re-trigger itself. I choose before save for same record updates and after save for related actions. I add fault paths, bulk safe collection logic, and clear error messages. Finally, I test insert, update, bulk, and permission scenarios. Be sure to cover fault paths, debug runs, entry criteria, recursion, before save versus after save timing, null values, collection handling, bulk behavior, limits, permissions, and transaction rollback. Question 11. What is the Salesforce order of execution, and why does it matter to an administrator? The order of execution matters because multiple automations can act on the same transaction. I understand that a record enters the save cycle, before save automation and validations run, duplicate checks and triggers execute, and after save actions may update related records or initiate additional work. The exact sequence can vary by Salesforce release and automation type, so I verify current documentation. I avoid overlapping tools, document dependencies, and test recursion and final field values. Explain the sequence conceptually, including before save flow, validation, duplicate rules, triggers, after save automation, assignment, auto-response, workflow, escalation, and roll-ups, while acknowledging version-specific differences. Question 12. How would you deploy Salesforce configuration safely from a sandbox to production? I begin with a documented deployment scope and dependency checklist. I build and test changes in a sandbox, then deploy through change sets or an approved DevOps pipeline, depending on organizational maturity. I include required fields, flows, permissions, metadata dependencies, and tests, while avoiding direct production edits. I schedule appropriate communication, validate in production with representative records, monitor errors, and maintain a rollback or corrective plan for failed assumptions. Cover requirement control, source and target comparison, change sets or DevOps tools, dependencies, profiles, permissions, tests, deployment validation, backout strategy, user communication, and post-deployment verification. Question 13. How would you improve adoption when sales users resist a new Salesforce process? I first determine whether resistance comes from poor design, missing training, duplicate entry, or lack of leadership support. I interview users, observe their workflow, and simplify required steps where possible. Then I pilot the change with influential users, demonstrate measurable benefits, provide role-based training, and publish short guidance. I monitor login activity, field completion, process usage, and business outcomes. Adoption improves when users see Salesforce removing work rather than adding administration. Focus on discovery interviews, root cause analysis, simplified user experience, stakeholder sponsorship, training by role, pilot groups, documentation, feedback loops, adoption metrics, and balancing governance with productivity. Question 14. How do Salesforce reports and dashboards support data quality management? I create exception reports for missing required business data, invalid stages, stale opportunities, duplicate indicators, and inconsistent ownership. Dashboards turn those exceptions into visible trends by team or region, while scheduled reports notify responsible owners. I use field history where changes need investigation and assign remediation clearly. Metrics should lead to action. A low completeness score is useful only when someone owns correction and the process causing the gap is improved. Mention completeness and consistency metrics, exception reports, duplicate indicators, dashboard visibility, ownership, scheduled notifications, field history, data stewardship, actionable thresholds, and separating symptoms from root causes. Question 15. A business team asks for a custom object and several fields. How would you gather requirements and design the solution? I translate the request into user stories and map the current process, users, decisions, and reporting needs. Before creating a custom object, I confirm that a standard object or existing configuration cannot solve the problem. I define fields, relationships, ownership, security, lifecycle, automation, and retention requirements, then prototype with stakeholders. Acceptance criteria should cover usability, reporting, permissions, and future scale. Good administration solves the business problem without unnecessary customization. Discuss stakeholder interviews, user stories, business process mapping, standard object evaluation, data model, relationships, security, reporting, automation, scalability, naming conventions, prototyping, and acceptance criteria. If you are still with us, congratulations! You are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.